unsupported by reliable and safe technology. China is certainly producing a lot of them, and some would say dumping them in certain markets. That's more of an explosion.
Oh my gosh.
So that's got to be the battery explosion.
Yeah.
You know this one.
Ooh. Wow.
They have done some cool features on like the surface, the user experience, you know what I mean? And there's quite a lot of reels and stuff on Instagram of like how cool these Chinese EVs look.
Yeah.
Because, you know, Chinese people are pretty creative. Mm-hmm. So like, I'm sure there's some people in these companies who have like good intentions and, you know, they've designed some actual cool features, but like you said, probably the underlying technology, they don't really have the actual tech. Because from the start, it all comes from other companies. Like a lot of it's from Tesla, actually. Yeah. And Elon Musk has even tweeted saying a certain company, I think it was, I can't remember which one it was, but they had a older version of the source code from Tesla.
Yeah.
But they didn't have the computer and certain things that Tesla has, right? So they have elements of Tesla, and then they've had to kind of do their own thing to fill in the blanks.
Well, usually the method is they force foreign companies to open joint ventures and share their IP. And then they take the IP and start a local competitor.
Yeah.
And I mean, many countries, even the US, you know, if you're a Hyundai or whatever, you want to sell cars with better terms in the US, they make you build a factory in the US. But they don't force you to do a joint venture and get all of your IP, which they do in China.
Yes.
And that's one way they manage to get a lot of knowledge. Some people have estimated that every year the loss to the US in terms of IP is like 500 billion. So, yeah, but they have been doing that. I think the other thing with EVs, which I think people are starting to discover, is that you have to produce the electricity somewhere. And the more EVs you have to have more power plants, and whether they're coal or gas or
and most
nuclear
of
or
coal,
something. Yeah. So the green thing doesn't really fly.
Well, Elon Musk has said it's because you produce power at scale, which is way more efficient than if it was just one internal combustion engine. So it is more efficient. Even if you're using fossil fuels, it's still more efficient because it's at mass scale. So that's kind of the argument.
But you know what the issue was? Because I think Tesla in China, they didn't have to do a joint venture. But then I'm thinking about, because the core of an EV is the battery, right? So because Tesla doesn't make their own battery, they're still buying from some of the companies, like CATL is a big Chinese battery maker. So at some point, even if Tesla didn't give up their technology directly, you know, the battery side of things, you still have to do it. Or even the people that have worked in the Gigafactory in Shanghai, you know, at some point they can still steal all of that, right? The issue, I think, that's different in the United States, that you mentioned, I think was interesting, was even if you don't ask them to do a joint venture, you still do a factory there, right? But in China, I think they do one step more, which is for every EV they produced, the government is giving the company money, subsidizing them so that they can sell it at a lower price. And I think this is the point, because I don't know if you guys remember the whole 5G craze like a decade ago. So in Europe, especially because they have Nokia and Ericsson, two of the big telecom guys, they were losing bidding wars against Huawei in different different countries, because say they were offering 10 million for a contract, Huawei was doing 5 million. Or if they were doing $1 billion, Huawei was doing, you know, a third of that, like 300 million. So nobody domestically could compete with the price point that Huawei was doing. The same thing here now. If the government is dishing out, let's say you produce a car for $100 and the government tells you you can sell it to Europe for like $20, you know, we'll pay the other $80 for you to make it so that it seems like you're at least not losing so much. That's why there's I saw this data just now. First half of 2014, one of the EV maker, NIO, lost 6.1 billion RMB, which I think is about $300 million US dollars in net loss. But yeah, their sales, their numbers for the sales and everything else is still climbing. So it's literally the number of production, the number of sales goes higher, but their profit is really low. And I think this happens. That's also why from 2022 to 23 to 24, Chinese companies that were selling EVs went from like 70 of them down to like 30 of them. So half of them went bankrupt because they weren't actually selling cars. There was more recent one, Jiwa Auto. They also went out of business and they had just launched a car in September, and then 3 months later they went out of business because a lot of them are just in it for the subsidy. They're not really in it for making cars. Yeah.
Wow.
Makes me wonder how long this industry can sustain itself. Because like Tesla is actually selling a lot of cars, right?
They are.
And I think BYD is the only one that's kind of profitable. But like you mentioned, if the EU and US tariffs, hit, they can only really sell it to like third world countries.
And then the question of power comes up. Yes, it's more economic to produce power at scale, but you still will have to produce a lot more power. You'll need to build a lot of power plants for that. And I don't know how many power plants they're going to build in Africa. I don't know how many power plants they're going to build in the US.
We have the same problem here actually with that, don't we? Like the grid, the strain on the grid.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So it's a whole ecosystem that has to be created, I guess, to support that. And I think right now the US government is providing subsidies too for Ford and GM to make electric cars and to create battery factories. They have the new thing called like the battery belt, like all these states where they are building new battery factories. And you can say subsidies are bad, but the US is doing it too because it needs to counter the CCP. So that's a market that's basically shaped by governments in a way.
But is it subsidizing their losses or is it subsidizing their structure, like their infrastructure? Because like the thing I understand about the EV industry in China is that, so basically everybody would do the same thing, like 100 companies will start, right? But in the US you only have maybe 3-4 big companies doing it. So, but then China's saying like, we'll pay you like all 100 of you guys to do the same thing.
They pay the companies, right?
They pay the companies, yeah.
In the US you can get a tax credit for it.
It's usually like tax credits and things like that.
It's not paid to the company.
Yeah, but I remember like a few years ago when one of these tax credits for EVs was published, all the domestic car companies just raised their prices by the size of the subsidy. So it was actually a subsidy to the car companies.
Oh, okay.
But so it's a little more complicated than that. But I think that the difference, I guess, between the US or Europe, which is really in trouble in terms of their own car manufacturers, I think Volkswagen, it's the first time in a long time that they're actually firing people in Germany.
Wow.
In their factories in Germany. But basically still these companies need to create good products and sell them in Europe, in the US, even if the government supports them. I think one of the problems in China is that they don't.
So you're saying the product itself is just not good enough?
The product is not good enough, and it's not the purpose, right? Because these companies, they're not really companies, they're arms of the state.
That's true.
So you create a good product, if it serves the state, but basically you just want to take over the market. And you don't really care that much about the product, or is it safe or it's not safe. You just want to take over. So it's really the difference between market economies where governments intervene and non-market economies where all companies are basically arms of the state.
So what if you're a consumer then? I don't think right now, at least from the argument's perspective, that there's still any like definitive reason to not buy a BYD if you're somebody like who's really in the market for an EV, in my view. Because if you really think about it, they're not going to see the videos like this unless they watch, our show or they're actively on Twitter. But then the Chinese government is very good at masking those flaws,
scrubbing them from the internet.
Right. So, because like every time I talk about the EVs, like one of the big thing is that but BYDs are just so much cheaper and they're just so they're so innovative, right? Even if the innovation it's in the small pointless details, but it's like they're still doing it. So I think one of the reasons why the Western EV makers are a little bit behind, except for maybe Tesla, is I don't know, maybe the way they're thinking about this is because the thing with Tesla is that they were the pioneers, but I think if everybody does the same thing, maybe it's people just need to kind of change the way move on. I don't know, because the Japanese, they're not even doing EVs, right? They're doing hybrids.
Yes.
So maybe it's not even the good thing to compete anymore in EVs, because that's what I think is the EV industry in China is going to start to decline. It's already declining. This year's sales are much worse, and they're expecting to decrease in 2025. So I think it's already declining. It happened with a lot of other things too, like the chip makers, the semiconductor industry. It's also one of those things. And obviously, yeah, because if the US sanctions them, then they couldn't get chips anymore. So
they're actually trying to also vertically integrate the chips. So now they have a policy in China that they're encouraging their EV makers to use locally produced chips rather than buy from Europe or the US. So they're trying to take over that part, to have it like vertically integrated.
But doesn't that just shuts them down? Because I don't think China can make anything smaller than 7 nanometers.
Well, I think most chips for cars are basically legacy chips.
Yeah.
And so it doesn't matter that much. When we were asking about why the European and American manufacturers have not done that good a job in EVs, I think there are many reasons, but usually when you have like legacy companies that have been around for a long time and done things a certain way, when there is disruption in the market, when there's new technology, that's always the time when startups get the chance to become the new unicorns. That's not unique, and sometimes the incumbents lose. It's happened so many times in so many markets. The issue is that a lot of these startups have not done that good a job in terms of product quality, because they're basically supported by the government in China. And so the fact that when technology changes, when industry changes, the old dinosaurs, some of them die and new startups become big companies, that's like how it usually works. It's just that in this case, the ones who are trying to take over the market are not really companies operating in a market economy. So what the kind of products they're making, the way they're trying to take over the market, it's a real opportunity, but it's like many times, as we've seen, that the product is not good enough, it's not reliable enough, it's managing to succeed because of government subsidies and support. And the thing is that at some point the CCP might say, we're done supporting you. And then what happens?
That's pretty much what's happening to Huawei now, because they lost their usefulness, right? They got sanctioned, they're no longer useful in the global domination. So I guess BYD should probably watch out too, because once the U.S. does something, well, the cars aren't in the United States, but they're in Europe already.
Yeah.
So I think it will end up being one of those things where, like, Huawei's not being sold much in the U.S. anymore, but it's still being sold, in other parts of the world. I think it will just start to, as politics goes, when the two different sort of world isolates themselves from each other, maybe BYD will also become one of those products as well, locally instead of a global thing. So, but I think at the end of the day, I just think people should be careful, because since we mentioned that safety is really not the main focus for them, it might be better to stay away from them if you can. Yeah.
Get yourself a Tesla.
If you're really into it.
I just have a Jeep. I like the old style.
Me too.
Internal combustion engine. I don't want to rely on the grid. I've got cans of gas in my garage to fill it up.
I mean, you could always get a hybrid. I think that's Toyota's approach, right?
Yeah.
That they're still doing like the Land Cruiser stuff, but they're also doing a lot of hybrids. So you can use the existing extensive gas infrastructure, but also have the advantages of a hybrid or a plug-in hybrid. So that's always an option, and Toyota is pretty reliable.
Because if you have an EV, you've got to install a charger at your house, right? Otherwise, you're always going to be going somewhere to charge it. And if you're on a long trip, you've got to wait like half an hour for it to charge at a public charger.
That's why I was saying you should be like 4D chess this. Basically, you get your cans of gas, you buy a electric car charger, and
a
generator, and then you power the charger, and then you charge your EV, and then just show everybody how kind of this pointless conversion of energy would really be for a lot of people. But I don't know. EVs just doesn't seem that.
I test drove a hybrid, a Jeep hybrid, and I didn't like it. It was.
I don't like the electric buzzing sound. I like the engine sound.
Yeah, it's electric buzzing, and the worst is when you're in a parking lot and it's going at slow speed, and they put a fake sound through some speakers just to tell you that there's a car there. Like they have to do that now. Like that.
Really?
I don't know what it is, like a whirring sound. I don't know why they chose that sound. It's the most horrible sound ever. But they were forced to do that because it used to be that like if a Tesla was creeping up behind you in a parking lot, you couldn't hear it.
Wow.
So now all the hybrids and electric cars have this.
I thought it was the wheels turning. That's what makes
No, it's a fake sound that's played through, I guess, speakers. Yeah.
I mean, I think technologies have changed, and some people are early adopters, some are not. I guess the people here are not. But you know, so I don't have anything against EVs. Obviously, it's still at the stage of early adopters in terms of the infrastructure, right? If you want to be able to drive anywhere and still have power, it's not that easy. If you live in a specific place and you drive to work and pick up the kids, that's one thing. If you want more flexibility, it's still in the beginning stages. So I think we'll have to see what happens. And we'll have to see what happens if the market really becomes a genuine market competition between companies for the best products and the best infrastructure. What happens? I don't know what's going to happen. Maybe it will become the new technology in gas-powered cars will be gone like the horse carriages, and maybe not. Maybe they'll coexist. Well, I think we'll just have to see.
Yeah, I think it's more likely they'll coexist for quite a few decades to come. I don't think it's replacing them anytime soon, because there's still something cool about a gas car. When you push your foot down, you hear that roar of a massive engine. You know, I mean, I've been in electric cars that are very fast too. Like a friend of mine did the launch in his Tesla. It's a very expensive one, like over $100,000. He had the cheetah mode where it kind of goes down, and then he just hit the gas, and it's like you feel your skin like doing this, like you're on a roller coaster or something. But I still prefer the gas.
Yeah, and it goes back to the power infrastructure, because if you want to start powering trucks, not cyber trucks, real trucks, semi-trailers.
Semis, yeah.
Then you know the kind of power generation that you need to build is something that's non-existent anywhere.
Right.
So that's a constraint on the EV market that I don't know how it's going to be resolved or if it's going to be resolved.
And also, I don't think we'll ever see fair competition with the CCP involved. So that's another issue.
True. All right, well, what do you think, guys? Would you buy a Chinese EV? Probably not after you've heard everything we've talked about, but hey, leave your comments below. What do you think about them? Tell us some cool features, or tell us why you would or wouldn't buy one. We'd love to hear what you think. Don't forget to check out China Insider with David Zhang. You can also find Tammuz Itai's articles in the Epoch Times, and you can check out my channel, Learn Chinese Now. We'll see you in the next video. Don't forget to subscribe to this channel for more videos like this. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Bye.